So if you have, say, a 6-foot long blanket, right? That's enough to cover our bodies. And you cut 2 feet off the top, and then you stitch them back onto the bottom. Did the blanket get any longer?
No.
That is essentially what daylight savings does. It rearranges our hours, but the day doesn't actually get any longer. This next part of my speech is supposed to be called audience relevance. But to be quite honest, I don't know how daylight savings is really relevant to anyone besides the fact that it's just inconvenient in our day. The idea of daylight savings is outdated. And according to the historychannel.com, in their most recent article about daylight savings in 2014, it was implemented in World War I when they were trying to cut back on fuel costs by saving on how much fuel is expended on artificial light. And back then, it worked, because there were a lot of people that weren't in the country. A lot of people were serving for the war. Additionally, people worked more of the average 9-to-5 jobs. They woke up in the mornings, they went to work, and they were home in the evenings by the time it got dark. Unfortunately, that's not really how it works anymore. Classes for us start at the same time every day. Banks, buildings, and other professional establishments, they all start work at the same time every day, regardless of where the sun is in the sky. So it doesn't really affect our day anymore necessarily. Daylight savings, it's darker now in the evening, that kind of sucks. Oh, I drive in the morning and now my daylight is a little bit extended in the morning when it seems like it would be more convenient for me. But the reality is, it isn't really necessary anymore. Not only that, but daylight savings is simply no longer a viable energy saver. With our energy sources today, we don't necessarily use fuel for our energy, for artificial light that we use during the day. So it just isn't really necessary. So the way I'm going to tell you about daylight savings and how it's really no longer necessary and it's inconvenient at most. First, when we were all kids, we learned that daylight savings helped farmers. But turns out, farmers were actually not really in favor of daylight savings to begin with. Then we'll talk about how the idea of daylight savings isn't necessarily logical anymore, before finally going into how daylight savings takes a detrimental toll on our bodies. So first, it doesn't really help the farmers. In a novel written by Michael Downing in 2009 entitled Spring Forward, he goes into the idea that farmers were actually the leading lobby against daylight savings. The idea for them was that though they were waking up at a more reasonable hour in the morning when the sun was up, and that was going to help them farm, when it came time to actually sell their goods in markets at the farmers market, it wasn't really working out. Because farmers markets then weren't run by artificial light. They started at a reasonable hour in the middle of the day, but they ended whenever it got dark. So it gave them farmers essentially less time for them to actually sell the produce that they had come up with. So not only that, but the markets that run now, they run with artificial daylight. The farmers markets are able to start at a different hour so that it's more reasonable for farmers, and they're able to go later into the night, extending the time that farmers are actually able to sell their goods. So though we thought, oh, well, farmers are going to be able to benefit because they won't have to wake up so early, it doesn't really work out that way. Not only that, but we found in studies shown by the Cal Poly Institute, their agricultural department, they showed studies that cows are actually not okay with being milked at a different hour. Cows don't run on alarm clocks like we do, so when you go milk a cow at 5 a.m. every morning, when the hour to them is shifted, it not only affects the quality, but it also affects the quantity of how much milk they're able to produce, making it a less viable source for farmers to actually make money off of what they're doing. Next, daylight savings is not actually saving energy anymore. We're able to run off of artificial light. The idea was based on the 9-to-5 average American workday, which is unfortunately not realistic anymore. It's shown in a study shown by the National Bureau of Labor Statistics in 2013, about 15 million Americans are working night shifts or vampire shifts. So unless we're flipping the entire clock around, really the people who are affected by daylight savings time and how the artificial light that they're producing is only affected by a very small percentage now. And adding on to that, the 9-to-5 workers, or the average American worker who are working in city buildings or offices, are actually expending even more energy, as shown by the National Bureau of Economic Research in 2008. So we moved that hour in the morning, and we tacked it on to the end of the day. So that leaves more light in the evening. And everybody knows that when you have more light, the more light that you have in your house, the warmer your house is going to become. So you're running your air conditioner for an extra hour in the evening. savings, which is actually proving that we're spending more energy and more fuel energy with all of the energy that we're putting into our air conditioning units at the end of the day. Because it's nationwide, different areas and different time zones are actually using their energy a lot more, and they're using it a lot less efficiently. Because when we had the hour in the morning, it was cooler, so it wasn't really affecting our day. And lastly, there is a large internal toll that daylight savings time takes on our bodies. So if I didn't have you at being concerned for the farmers, or if I didn't have your attention when we were talking about the cows, I have your attention now, because you're actually at an increased risk of heart attack after daylight savings time. You have this circadian clock, which is your internal time. So it's about the natural 24-hour cycle that we develop. We all wake up in the mornings, some of us a little later than others. We all stay up a certain time in the evenings, and we do the same thing every day, which gives our bodies a certain rhythm. Naturally, we want to wake up in the mornings. We want to be out and in the daylight. So people who work night shifts are actually at a disadvantage with their circadian clocks. Having your circadian clock tweaked, even by a single hour, takes a toll on a lot of parts of your body, including your immune system, your anxiety, and can be a leading cause for sleep deprivation. All of these are leading causes of heart attacks. It's shown by the University of Alabama in their class of 2013 by their mental health department. It shows that heart attack risk actually increases 10% following the 2 days following daylight savings time when we lose an hour. Inversely, our heart attack decreases. Our heart attack rate decreases 10% 2 days following the hour we get back. So it's not really like the blanket analogy, where if we just move it over, it all evens out. Because we're having American citizens who partake all become victims to this 10%, which is actually very drastic and affects a lot of people every year. So, and it's unnecessarily putting stress on our bodies that can lead to detrimental health effects. So, daylight savings time isn't really necessary. It isn't really efficient. It doesn't save us energy. So the next time that you have to reset your clock in the spring, don't just roll over and change the hour. Consider the health effects. Consider the 10%. And for goodness sakes, consider the cows. So, and then you have to change your clock, because unfortunately it's going to be really hard to repeal the act, and so far one of the only states that has done it effectively is Arizona, as well as only half of Indiana. So consider that the next time we have our time change, which will be in the spring.